So we are reading the Celestine Prophecy by James Redfield. We're going to start the book right now, today.
For half a century now, a new consciousness has been entering the human world. A new awareness that can only be called transcendent, spiritual. If you find yourself reading this book, then perhaps you already sense what is happening, already feel it inside.
So
It
again,
begins
a lot of transformation has started taking place, and this started taking place maybe about 10, 12, 15 years back, where people started getting consciously aware of these things, who am I? What am I doing here? These questions started becoming important.
it begins with the heightened perception of the way our lives move forward. We notice those chance events that occur at just the right moment and bring forth just the right individuals to suddenly send our lives in a new and important direction.
So again,
Perhaps more than any other people in any other time, we intuit higher meaning in these mysterious happenings.
the point here is that synchronicity starts to take place, has started taking place. People are becoming more aware of these synchronicities, and they are again jacking into the flow. What we are calling it, getting into the flow. That has started to happen more and more. Again, the percentage of people getting into that is not very big. I would say it's still not very big, but yeah, a lot of this stuff is starting to happen. You can see what's happening today in Zoom also.
It begin, we know that life is really about a spiritual unfolding that is personal and enchanting.
Okay,
And
so over here, when we are looking at it from the Gita perspective, what he says that today, why are we here? The only thing that we are here for is spiritual growth and spiritual evolution. So that's what he's saying. We know that life is really about spiritual unfolding, that is personal and enchanting. So it's a personal journey in this spiritual unfolding.
an unfolding that no science or philosophy or religion has yet fully clarified. And we know something else as well. Know that once we do understand what is happening, how to engage this elusive process and maximize its occurrence in our lives, human society will take a quantum leap into a whole new way of life.
So again,
One that realizes
when what is happening here? The moment we can engage this flow, the moment we can jack into this flow and understand what the power of this flow is, that is when the quantum leap will take place. For example, people who've attended the excursion workshop, how does a reball work, right? And you're seeing it work in your life all the time. I was talking to Rita ji, she's just done the workshop. I told her, why aren't you sharing if you're using the reball? She told me that I've been using it so many times that how am I going to post it all the time? And she's just done the work. I mean the workshop about a week back, right? So we have a lot of innate abilities and powers and abilities within us which we are not even aware of. And once we start becoming aware of them and then start to use them in the way that they are meant to be used, quantum shifts can start taking place.
this new if it crystallizes something that you perceive in life, then pass on whatever you see to another. For I think our new awareness of the spiritual is expanding in exactly this way, no longer through hype nor fad, but personally, through a kind of positive psychological contagion among people.
So again, when you go through an experience and you get that experience, you understand what that experience is. So the experience and the knowledge about that experience, it crystallizes in you, and then you start to transfer it to people. That's why sharing of the knowledge becomes extremely important for this entire transformation to take place. And at the end, that is what we are attempting to do in awareness. that okay, this is available, this is something that you can engage, this is what you can do. So again, opening the mind to the possibilities of what is possible.
All that any of us have to do is suspend our doubts and distractions just long enough, and miraculously, this reality can be our own.
So now, if I am in doubt, I cannot engage it. If I'm open to the experience, only then can I engage it. Now, if I'm working from the logical mind, then the logical mind can only comprehend what it knows. It cannot comprehend something which is beyond that. So many times what happens is people will criticize a process, but they have not experienced the process themselves. Now, if you don't know what it is, how can you criticize it? This is what happened with the remote viewing program in the US. Now, most of the stuff they were doing was absolutely classified. Okay. Now, the US government, the Senate, they sent some people to investigate the process whose clearance level was here. And the stuff that they were doing was clearance level was here. Now, naturally, since this guy's clearance level is here, he cannot see this. So, what will the report this guy who's seen only till here give? He's going to go and give that it's bunkum. They're not doing anything, and that's why the entire remote viewing program was shut down in USA. Now, ultimately, what has happened now is that all that a lot of this stuff which was classified and it was not out in the open has now recently, through court orders, all that data has got reopened. They are like 5 volumes that thick with very small writing. 5 volumes of data has been books have come out about what they did in that. And those books are pretty expensive. I thought I'll buy it, but it's very, very expensive. So then I refrained from buying it. Maybe sometime later we will get it.
A critical mass. I drove up to the restaurant and parked, then leaned back in my seat to think for a moment. Charlene, I knew, would already be inside, waiting to talk with me. But why? I hadn't heard a word from her in 6 years. Why would she have shown up now, just when I had sequestered myself in the woods for a week?
So again, Charlene called him out of the blue. And actually they've not been in touch. So why has she called her? There's a question mark in his mind.
I stepped out of the truck and walked towards the restaurant. Behind me, the last glow of a sunset sank in the west and cast highlights of golden amber across the wet parking lot. Everything had been drenched an hour earlier by a brief thunderstorm, and now the summer evening felt cool and renewed, and because of the fading light, almost surreal. A half moon hung overhead.
So now what is happening? He is in appreciation of nature. Okay. So whenever we get into appreciation, it allows us to connect into these higher states also. Also, when we are looking at it from the heart math principle, when we are on the left side of the grid, one of the techniques to get on the right side is to go into gratitude, into appreciation. So when I start appreciating things, automatically the shifts can start taking place.
As I walked, old images of Charlene filled my mind. Was she still beautiful, intense? How would time have changed her? And what was I to think of this manuscript she had mentioned? This ancient artifact found in South America that she couldn't wait to tell me about?
Okay, so now he's
I
wondering,
have a
he was wondering why. What is this manuscript?
I have a 2 hour layover at the airport, had said on the telephone. Can you meet me for dinner? You're going to love what this manuscript says. It's just your kind of mystery.
So again, he was
My kind of mystery. My kind of mystery? What did she mean by that? Inside, the restaurant was crowded. Several couples waited for tables. When I found the hostess, she told me Charlene had already been seated and directed me towards a terraced area above the main dining room. I walked up the steps and became aware of a crowd of people surrounding one of the tables. The crowd included two policemen. Suddenly, the policeman turned and rushed past me and down the steps. As the rest of the people dispersed, I could see past them to the person who seemed to have been the center of attention, a woman, still seated at the table. Charlene. I quickly walked up to her. Charlene, what's going on? Is anything wrong? She tossed her head back in mock exasperation and stood up, flashing her famous smile. I noticed that her hair was perhaps different, but her face was exactly as I remembered: small, delicate features, wide mouth, huge blue eyes. You wouldn't believe it, she said, pulling me into a friendly hug. I went to the restroom a few minutes ago, and while I was gone, someone stole my
So
briefcase.
now someone knew that she's going to be talking about the manuscript, and they knew they must have had an inkling that it was in her briefcase. So they stole her briefcase.
What was in it? Nothing of importance, just some books and magazines I was taking along for the trip. It's crazy. The people at other tables told me someone just walked in, picked it up, and walked out. They gave the police a description, and the officers said they would search the area. Maybe I should help them look. No, no, let's forget about it. I don't have much time, and I want to talk with you. I nodded, and Charlene suggested we sit down. A waiter approached, so we looked over the menu and gave him our order. Afterward, we spent 10 or 15 minutes chatting in general. I tried to underpay myself, imposed isolation, but Charlene picked up on my vagueness. She leaned over and gave me that smile. So, what's really going on with you? She asked.
Okay, so
I
what
looked
does
at
this
her.
so what does this mean? Okay. Now naturally she's a very sensitive person. So she's got the vibe that something is wrong with him. We all get that vibe. Some of us pay more attention to it, some of us don't pay attention to it.
I looked at her eyes, at the intense way she was looking at me. You want the whole story immediately, don't you? Always, she said. Well, the truth is, I'm taking some time for myself right now and staying at the lake. I've been working hard and I'm thinking about changing directions in my life.
So now he's thinking about changing directions in his life, and the universe brings in Charlene back into his life, which is going to give him the direction. So, if we start paying attention to what the universe is bringing into our life, automatically we get an ability to see what direction we need to go to. So, what I'm finding more and more, at least in my life, that I've started saying yes. If someone comes up with something in front of me, I would say 9 out of 10 times now I've started saying yes. I don't know how I'm going to do it, why I'm going to do it, but I'll say yes. And then let's see what manifests out of it. There's this movie called Yes Men. I don't know if you've seen it. I think we had seen it in one of our movie sessions at the Awareness Club. But yeah, this is one movie that you all should look at. That how saying yes can actually empower your life. Most of the time we are in it can't, I won't, I will not do it. All that can't, won't, should, and all that should drop. Let us start saying yes to life, because the universe has infinite intelligence, and you are not going to, nothing in your life is going to show up that you're not really capable of doing. So the moment you take up the task, you'll find that things start to move pretty easy for you. So now he's wanting to change direction, and something has shown up.
I remember you talking about the lake. I thought you and your sister had to sell it. Not yet, but the problem is property taxes. Because the land is so close to the city, the taxes keep increasing. She
Welcome to
nodded.
the world.
So, what are you going to do next?
They say that only two things are uh, totally true. One is death, and the other is taxes. You can't evade them and you can't run away from them. That is also the reason why some people in America, they wanted to get off the grid. but they were not allowed to get off the grid. That means no electricity, nothing. They just took a piece of land somewhere in the wilderness and they were not connected with anything. And the departments, they actually said that no, you have to take electrical connection, otherwise you cannot stay in the land, because they don't want people off the grid. They want information about everyone all the time. So again, that's also a conspiracy theory which is going on. Yes, Renuji?
Bhaiya, could you repeat the name of that movie you said, which is very
Yes.
good?
Yes,
Yes, yes, ma'am.
yes, man. I don't know if it's available in Netflix. I have not seen. You can check it out.
She nodded. So, what are you going to do next? I don't know yet. Something different. She gave me an intriguing look. Sounds as if you're as restless as everyone else.
So now this is important. What she's saying is that everyone is getting restless. No one is still, because they're all looking for something and not being able to find it. So frustration, anxiety, and you see it in society today also, okay? In the sense that people don't know what they are doing. They're stuck in the syndrome going round and round, and they really don't know what they're doing or what they're doing it for. So there's a frustration which slowly starts to sleep in.
I suppose I said, why do you ask? It's in the manuscript. There was silence as I returned her gaze. Tell me about this manuscript, I said. She leaned back in her chair as if to gather her thoughts, then looked me in the eye again. I mentioned on the phone, I think, that I left the newspaper several years ago and joined a research firm that investigates cultural and demographic changes for the UN. My last assignment was in Peru. While I was there, completing some research at the University of Lima, I kept hearing rumors about an old manuscript that had been discovered. Only no one could give me any of the details, not even at the departments of archaeology or anthropology. And when I contacted anyone, they denied any knowledge whatsoever.
So again, most of these esoteric stuff are under the table. Even when Robert Monroe started having his out of body experiences, and then he went into extensively looking for any kind of data, any kind of material about all this, he found that there was no data. And then he suddenly started getting stuff, what he called from the underground. So it was not normally available, but a lot of data was available under the table. And that's when he started getting it. So his book was literally one of the first books in the Western countries to come out with this out of body experience. And ultimately, what happened was he was the one who labeled the out of body experience. So it used to be astral travel previously, but out of body was a term that he coined. Okay, so again, the departments don't want to acknowledge it because it hurts them. Because anything spiritual does not like any control. So if the manuscript came out, then the government would be shaky.
One person told me that the government was actually working to suppress this document for some reason, although again, he had no direct knowledge. You know me, she continued. I'm curious. When my assignment was over, I decided to stay around for a couple of days to see what I could find out. At first, every lead I pursued turned out to be another dead end. But then, while I was eating lunch in a cafe outside of Lima, I noticed a priest watching me. After a few minutes, he walked over and admitted that he had heard me inquiring about the manuscript earlier in the day. He wouldn't reveal his name, but he agreed to answer all my questions.
So again, no one wants to bell the cat, right? But then people have ears. So if you are there, then they ultimately tend to come and contact you. If you start looking for someone, someone hears that you're looking, and again the depleting forces as well as the uplifting forces, they are going to start coming and looking for you.
She hesitated for a moment, still looking at me intensely. He said the manuscript dates back to about 600 BC. It predicts a massive transformation in human society. Beginning when? I asked. In the last decades of the 20th century. Now? Yes, now. What kind of transformation is it supposed to be? I asked. She looked embarrassed for a moment, then with force said, "The priest told me it's a kind of renaissance in consciousness, occurring very slowly. It's not religious in nature, but it is spiritual.
Okay, so
We're
now
discovering something."
there's a distinction between religious and spiritual. Okay, now the if you're doing ritualistic, uh, ritualistic practices, that is religious. But spirituality transcends that. I'm not saying that there are no rituals in spirituality, but the connect is something very different. The dogmas of religion drop off when we are going into spiritualistic pursuits.
It's not religious in nature, but it is spiritual. We're discovering something new about human life on this planet, about what our existence means, and according to the priest, this knowledge will alter human culture dramatically. She paused again and then added, "The priest told me the manuscript is divided into segments or chapters, each devoted to a particular insight into life."
Okay, so like the Gita also, it's divided into chapters, and each chapter actually deals with one aspect of our living. So, like that, this manuscript also divided into chapters, and it deals with one aspect of our spiritual growth in each one of the chapters.
The manuscript predicts that in this time period, human beings will begin to grasp these insights sequentially.
So, again,
Once an
sequentially,
insight, then another, as we move from where we are now to a completely spiritual culture on earth.
so what is it saying over here? That you will grasp the insight sequentially. That means one insight builds on the other insight. If I go to the 10th insight or the ninth insight without actually understanding and comprehending and inculcating inside myself the first insight, then I will not get the 10th insight at all. So it is one step at a time. So any kind of growth always takes place one step at a time.
I shook my head and raised my eyebrows cynically. "Do you really believe in all this?" "Well," she said, "I think." "Look around," I interrupted, pointing at the crowd sitting in the room below us. "This is the real world. Do you see anything changing out there?" Just as I said that, an angry remark erupted from a table near the far wall. A remark I couldn't understand, but which was loud enough to hush the entire room. At first, I thought the disturbance was another robbery, but then I realized it was only an argument. A woman appearing to be in her 30s was standing up and staring indignantly at a man seated across from her. "No," she yelled. "The problem is that this relationship is not happening the way I wanted. Do you understand? It's not happening." She composed herself, tossed her napkin on the table, and walked out.
So now this statement is very important. The problem in this relationship is it is not happening the way I want it. Now what does this mean? That she is operating from a small conscious mind, not seeing the bigger picture, and a desire of her, that is that she wants it in a particular way, that is the way or the highway. So if you're not open to the adjustments, you're not opening to creating balance, you're not open to seeing what is important, okay, in the bigger picture. So we come back to the four S's over here. What is it? Swata, Sahaj, Shresht, and Swikar. Okay. Then we come to the four agreements. Be impeccable with your word. Do not take things personally. Do not make assumptions and give it your best. When we merge these four S's and the four agreements, you will understand that everything that you want cannot manifest. You have to see the bigger picture to actually get into the flow. And this is a big problem today, that everyone wants what they want and they're not willing to adjust and see what is for the higher good or what is for the greater good. They get stuck in their personal selfish requirements. And you can only grow when you detach. Again, in the Gita talks, it's always about detachment, it's about expansion. That's the same thing in four agreements, in the Toltec policies that they say. You have to detach. You cannot attach yourself to a particular thing. Otherwise, you will it'll pull you down. Ultimately, it will pull you down. You have to have that fluidity. You have to have that flow in your life.
Charlene and I stared at each other, shocked that the outburst had occurred at the very moment we were discussing the people below us. Finally, Charlene nodded towards the table where the man remained alone and said, "It's the real world that's changing."
So again,
How I
synchronicity. Okay, they were discussing something, and it came pratyakshan front of them.
how I asked, still off balance. The transformation is beginning with the first insight, and according to the priest, this insight always surfaces unconsciously at first as a profound sense of restlessness.
So
Restlessness?
people are feeling that things are not what they should be. Okay, so there is something missing. That's what causes the restlessness.
Restlessness? Yes. What are we looking for? That's just it. At first, we aren't sure. According to the manuscript, we are beginning to glimpse an alternative kind of experience, moments in our lives that feel different somehow, more intense and inspiring. But we don't know what this experience is or how to make it last, and when it ends, we are left feeling dissatisfied and restless with a life that seems ordinary again.
So again, you've had an experience, you've had a uplifting experience. Now you don't have the means to hold it, right? So then it drops again. So it's like you're going up, you're learning, and then you come to a plateau, you can't hold it and you drop. So then when that drop comes, it leads to further dissatisfaction because you're constantly grappling for that experience again, but then that experience is out of your hand. So that's why it becomes very important to take that growth step by step, step by step, step by step, make it a part of your being. Rather than doing it, you're being it. And then when it becomes a part of your DNA, then you can hold it. You will not drop it.
You think this restlessness was behind the woman's anger? Yes, she just like the rest of us. We're all looking for more fulfillment in our lives and we won't put up with anything that seems to bring us down. This restless searching is what behinds the me first attitude that has characterized recent decades, and it's affecting everyone from Wall Street to street gangs.
So again, me first. Me first is selfishness. So I am first, right? So I want everything my way. If it is not in my way, then I'm not going to accept it. And when we are selfish, automatically we create problems for ourselves. So again, when I'm not selfish, then I can approach anyone. I can relate with anyone. I can ask for anything. Why? Because I am not selfish. But if I'm selfish, then there's a guilt factor which is also playing inside. So you can't go and ask things from people. So that's where that openness, that guilt freeness has to come in, and that can only.
Welcome.
Please unmute yourself. What are we looking for? That's just it. At first, we aren't sure. According to the manuscript, this has gone too back. Sorry. You think this restlessness was behind the woman's anger? Yes.
Shivangla, again, you've gone very back. Yeah, okay. Next paragraph, actually.
She looked directly at me. And when it comes to relationships, we are so demanding that we are making them near impossible.
So again, the first me attitude creates the problem. The freedom to be is not there. So you have to allow people to be free in doing what they are doing.
Her remark brought back the memory of my last two relationships. Both had tried intensely and both within a year had failed. When I focused on Charlene again, she was waiting patiently. What exactly are we going to doing to our romantic relationships? I asked. I talked with the priest a long time about this, she replied. He said that when both partners in a relationship are overly demanding, when each expects the other to live in his or her world, to always be there to join in his or her chosen activities, an ego battle inevitably develops.
So again, selfishness, right? If you're not seeing the bigger picture, if you're not acting for the greater good and you're selfish about what you're doing, then it starts to create a problem. Shivangla, you can read a little faster.
What she said struck home. My last two relationships had indeed degenerated into power struggles. In both situations, we had found ourselves in a conflict of agendas. The pace had been too fast. We had too little time to coordinate our different ideas about what to do, where to go, what interests to pursue. In the end, the issue of who would lead, who would determine the direction for the day, had become an irresolvable difficulty.
So again, when we work from the four S's, this thing can be easily resolved. Has it come spontaneously? Is it easy for you to do? Is it for the greater good? This is the most important. Is it for the greater good? Okay. And then are you accepting it? Most of the time when you are resisting what is coming into your life, that is where the problem starts to occur.
Because of this control battle, Charlene continued, the manuscript says, we will find it very difficult to stay with the same person for any length of time.
So again, now in the UK, I'm told that the divorce rate is something like 95%. It is not that high yet in India, but the divorce rate in India also is rising. So 95% of the people in the UK are divorced. Okay, they may be remarried again, but they are divorced. And in America, you hear people marrying 10 times and 20 times. So you can understand that this is exactly what is happening.
That doesn't seem very spiritual, I said. That's exactly what I told the priest, she replied. He said to remember that while most of society's recent ills can be traced to the restlessness and searching, this problem is temporary and will come to an end. We are finally becoming conscious of what we're actually looking for, of what this other, more fulfilling experience really is. When we grasp it fully, we'll have attained the first insight.
So again, there's a restlessness which is causing us to become more aware. So the more aware we become, the we get the tools in our toolbox to be able to transcend that restlessness.
Our dinner arrived, so we paused for several minutes as the waiter poured more wine and to taste each other's food. When she reached across the table to take a bite of salmon from my plate, Charlene wrinkled her nose and giggled. I realized how easy it was to be with her.
So again, there are some people in your life that you find ease with. It's easy to be with them. Okay. And those are the special people. They may be in your soul group. We'll be talking about soul groups later, where they come back to you with you to achieve certain things, to be able to experience certain things.
Okay, I said, what is this experience we're looking for? What is the first insight? She hesitated as though unsure how to begin. This is hard to explain, she said, but the priest put it this way. He said the first insight occurs when we become conscious of the coincidences in our lives.
So again, coincidences, spontaneity, what is just occurring. I'm talking about something and it suddenly manifests. So what is happening? We are jacking into the flow and we are becoming aware of these things which are spontaneously happening in our system and what is appearing. Okay, so when we start paying attention, that is when the shift starts to take place. And that's what the first insight is all about.
She leaned towards me. Have you ever had a hunch or intuition concerning something you wanted to do? Some course you wanted to take in your life? And wondered if it was for you. And then, after you had half forgotten about it and focused on other things, you suddenly met someone or read something or went somewhere that led to the very opportunity you envisioned.
So now all of us have this intuition. It's just a matter of starting to become aware of it. This is the technique that we are using it at a conscious level when we are using the one breath technique that we learn in the excursion workshop. Now the point here is that the more attention you start paying to these small things. And again, the other factor over here is our body is also hypersensitive. I've repeated this many times. If you start paying attention to the shifts that are happening in your body system itself, you can actually get to know a lot of things. And this is exactly what Zia has been talking about in her program, Somatic Intelligence. Paying attention to your body and how to pay attention to your body to transform what is happening around you. Okay. So her program is actually very, very subtle and it is deceptively simple. So again, there are, I think, only 3 or 4 slots available right now. So if any one of you want to join, please join immediately. Otherwise, it's out. I don't know when she's going to do this program again, and then you can't progress again further in that program. But this is exactly what Zia is talking about.
Well, she continued, according to the priest, these coincidences are happening more and more frequently, and that when they do, they strike us as beyond what would be expected by pure chance. They feel destined, as though our lives had been guided by some unexplained force. The experience induces a feeling of mystery and excitement, and as a result, we feel more alive.
So again, what happens? The more we connect to these things, the more flow we get into our life. I'll give you yesterday's example. For last 5 or 6 days, I had started to think that we need to have a talk at the 9:15 talk on acupressure. Okay. Yesterday's the guy who was going to talk, I mentioned this yesterday, who was going to give the talk. Day before yesterday, he called me up and told me that I have a family issue and I cannot do the talk on the 30th. Can you please postpone my talk? So I said, of course I can postpone it. I postponed him. And I was wondering, what are we going to do yesterday for the yesterday's talk? I thought we'll do a group biofield tuning. And suddenly, out of the blue, I get this message from, again, one of our fellow uh, uh, awareness members that, okay, my Masi is giving these talks. Would you like to do it? I said, Array, I'm thinking of acupressure. Now, this lady comes and tells me about acupressure. Of course, I'd like to do it. And immediately that program manifested, which is now going to take a bigger shape because she did a good job and we can take it forward, right? So, again, what happened? I was paying attention. I said yes. I allowed it to manifest and it simply chugged in. Okay, so this is what he's saying over here. The moment we start experiencing these mysterious coincidences and we start paying attention, the coincidences will start to increase in our life. Why? Because we are saying yes to the universe, not saying no.
Bhaiya, I have a question over here. There can be like two ways of looking at it. One is though we manifested it.
Yeah.
Okay. Another can be that since it was going to occur, it had already entered our energy field pehle se, and that's how we got the hunch ki, like ulta bhi to ho sakta hai na ki.
It's a chicken and egg story, Shipra. Which came first?
Yeah, I was just thinking.
Okay. But the fact is, the more you start saying yes with a gentleness and with compassion,
Yeah.
and you allow things to happen. Again, I come back to the 4 S's. Swata means it came by itself. You did not create it. Okay.
Yeah.
Sahaj, it is easy for you to do.
Yeah.
Shesht, it's for the greater good. And fifth, you accept it. Now, many times what will happen if you look back in your life, right?
Yeah.
Anything that has happened to you, all these four tenets will be met where you are happy about it. And when
Yes.
you've been unsuccessful, you will find that one of these tenets has been
Violated.
it has been
Right.
violated. You can check up, and it is absolute fact. I have done it. I have done it over and over and over and over again. And every time ये चार जो S's है, ये खरा उतरता है. Try it
Okay.
in your lives. You will figure that out.
Okay,
Niket, what's the fourth S?
Accept,
Acceptance.
accept.
What's the Hindi word for that?
स्वीकार.
Sweetheart.
Ah, thank you.
The priest told me that this is the experience that we've glimpsed and that we are now trying to manifest all the time. More people every day are convinced that this mysterious movement is real and that it means something,
You've
that
missed
something
something,
else
Sumaya.
is going on beneath everyday life. This awareness is the first insight. What happened?
You've missed something.
I missed something.
No, no, it's fine.
It's fine.
Yeah, yeah.
अच्छा अच्छा okay.
She looked at me expectantly, but I said nothing. Don't you see, she asked. The first insight is a reconsideration of the inherent mystery that surrounds our individual lives on this planet. We are experiencing these mysterious coincidences, and even though we don't understand them yet, we know they are real. We are sensing again, as in childhood, that there is another side of light that we have yet to discover, some other process operating behind the scenes.
So yeah, so now children, they can live in an imaginary world. Someone is coming to have tea with them, the dolls are talking to them. That's what we consider imaginary. Okay, now being in awareness, we can understand that there is more to it. Of course, the doll can talk to you. Why not? My computer can talk to me. Why not? So again, the point here is that we are experiencing these mysteries now, and we are opening ourselves to be able to connect with these mysteries, and we are also understanding that there is a plan behind the chaos, which is again the chaos theory, that even though things look chaotic, there is a plan which is working behind the chaos. So automatically we see that there's a lot of planning going on behind the scenes. Okay, like now, for example, when we are going into F27 in the planning center, there are agreements made between soul groups. We are going to come to this also, where the soul groups are there. That today, suppose I want to experience being slapped. So another friend of mine or Mr. A will say that, okay, I'm willing to come down to this experience with you, and I am willing to experience slapping someone. So he will experience slapping me, I will experience the getting slapped. Okay. Now this is where karma comes in. That today, if we do not understand that there is a game which is being played, it is an experiential game, and I get stuck with you. How did you slap me? Then the problem starts to get created. So now again, I have to experience that I'm going to slap you. So the intent gets set that I have to slap someone else. And that's how the game round and round and round it goes. The moment we start understanding these things, we start accepting it, that is when the transition will start taking place. So a lot of
Charlene, leaning further towards me, gesturing with her hands as she spoke, asked, I can remember a time, she said sternly, when you talked about these kinds of experiences. Her comment jolted me. She was right. There had been a period in my life when I had indeed experienced such coincidences and had even tried to understand them psychologically. Somewhere along the way, my view had changed. I had begun to regard such perceptions as immature and unrealistic for some reason, and I had stopped even noticing.
So again, जब जिंदगी के rigmarole में we get stuck in the material aspect of things, that is when we disconnect, and we are not connected with what is happening, this underlying plan, this underlying reality which is taking place under the reality that we perceive in this 3D universe.
I looked directly at Charlene, then said defensively, I was probably reading Eastern philosophy or Christian mysticism at that time. That's what you remember. Anyway, what you're calling the first insight has been written about many times. Charlene, what's different now? How is the perception of mysterious occurrences going to lead to a cultural transformation? Charlene looked down at the table for an instant and then back at me. Don't misunderstand, she said. Certainly, this consciousness has been experienced and described before. In fact, the priest made a point to say that the first insight wasn't new. He said, individuals have been aware of these unexplained coincidences throughout history, that this has been the perception behind many great attempts at philosophy and religion. But the difference now lies in the numbers. According to the priest, the transformation is occurring now because of the number of individuals having this awareness all at the same time.
Okay, so what does this mean? It means critical mass. That is when the tipping over will start taking place. Now, when 1% of the population is doing something, it's not a critical mass. But now let's say 5%, 10%, 20% start doing it. Now that becomes a critical mass, and then suddenly the shift will start taking place. So what she's saying here is that more and more people are becoming aware. You can see that in Zoom also. So many spiritual things are happening, so many spiritual things are taking place, which was never taking place before.
What did he mean exactly? I asked. He told me the manuscript says the number of people who are conscious of such coincidences would begin to grow dramatically in the sixth decade of the 20th century. He said that this growth would continue until sometime near the beginning of the following century, when we would reach a specific level of such individuals, a level I think of as a critical mass.
So now there's even talk of something called indigo children who are extremely intelligent. Okay, now we missed something in the fringe that we talked about. That young boy went into a coma, and when he came out, he started playing the piano a lot. So we've discussed this before of the walk-in concept. But the indigo children are in are the indi are those I mean those souls which are highly evolved. They come into the body of these children, and they are exceptionally creative and capable of high level of intelligence. Okay, they call them the indigo children. You can research, Google it, and you'll get a lot of data on indigo children.
Nikita, how do you explain this? कि वो coma में गया 6 दिन के लिए and he came with
Yeah,
this
so you can
ability?
have walk-ins. This is explained very well in Ruth Montgomery's books, where
Okay.
they've had a lot of experiences where a person has been declared dead and then he gets up. Okay, so what they are saying is it's also there in Dr. Newton's Journey of the Souls. We can read that book also. It's a fabulous book, where he says that when a child is conceived in the womb, I think it's the 3rd month or the 6th month, where the soul says, okay, I'm willing to come into this body. And
Yeah.
the soul is never always in the body. It keeps going up and down. It keeps coming and checking out, going out, coming in. And ultimately, when the child is born, that soul integrates with the child. Okay. Now, having said that, when someone is critical, or one soul doesn't want to stay in the body anymore, you can make an agreement that, okay, this soul is going out of the body and another soul will come and take over the body. That's why many times after critical or very traumatic experiences, the nature of a person totally transforms and takes a shift. A lot of research has been done in these things, although again it is under the table. People don't know about that research. Okay. So a lot of work has been done on that.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Do you want to stop?
Niket,
Yeah.
I've also had a near-death experience, and that has changed my life completely.
Exactly. So
I was a workaholic earlier, and now
yeah,
I'm totally into social work.
total vagabond you become.
No, I've become a social worker.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, a vagabond.
Vagabond.
You see, I'll tell you, there is a lot of work. What's her name? So I forget her name, but she's done a lot of work on near-death experiences. And she lists out, so I think there are 15 changes which tend to take place in any person who's had a near-death experience. So it's not that every near-death experiencer will experience all the changes, but
Right.
yes, many of them will be there. And one of the changes is that you start becoming more spiritualistic. You start becoming more
Yes.
holistic. You start looking at the benefit of others, except so the selfishness starts to drop. You understand?
Right.
You start your concept of
Larger than life. Yeah.
what is important and what is not important totally takes a shift. So the material aspect definitely takes a drop when a person comes back from an NDE. There are many books written on NDE experiences, and it's pretty fantastic what they experience and how they've
I
experienced.
must read, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. You must read on NDEs.
Yeah.
There's this lady called Natalie Schumann. She's written a book now. In fact, she's a trainer at the institute also, and
Uh-huh.
she was blasted in Iraq. She was a, and then she explains, when she went up, she met a council of people, and then they requested her to go back because she was, so that thing also happens. You are requested to go back and
Yeah.
come back. So there are many experiences like this where people have had a near-death experience. They go and then they're asked to return back in Earth because they have certain things that they need to fulfill.
And when you were talking about how when children talk to dolls and all,
Yeah,
I actually talk to my plants. I talk to nature. I
yeah,
talk to God. And
absolutely.
people may think you're crazy, but you're not. You're
You're
not.
not. Absolutely, you're not. Because
You
things
can hear
actually
God
talk back to
talking
you.
to you.
You can actually, everything has consciousness, right?
Yes.
Everything has conscious awareness at whatever level it has. And if you
Yeah.
can tune into that conscious awareness, then communication is absolutely possible. 101%. There's no doubt at
Yeah.
all.
Absolutely.
I mean, we can check with energy fields also. Now,
Mm-hmm.
if so suppose you hit a table with malice, the field of the table will change, and we can do it with the antenna. You
Yeah.
can see it with inanimate objects where suppose you don't use something for a very long time, it spoils. But if you keep using it carefully, it can last for
Yes.
your lifetime.
Yeah.
So again, it has consciousness, right? Now, suppose you isolate a person and no one is communicating with that person, you'll find that person will go dull. He'll
Yeah.
go into depression. But if you can nurture a person, the person blossoms, blooms. So if it is true for a person, it is true for a pen, it is true for a pencil, it is
Yes.
true
Yes.
for a computer, it is true for a music system, it is true for your car, it is true for your cooking utensils, it is true for everything.
Like here, I've come to the hospital to meet my aunt, and the doctor, the nurses, all are telling me, "What have you done? There's magic suddenly."
Yeah,
And she's smiling, laughing,
exactly.
reacting so beautifully.
Yeah,
So don't go, they're telling me. So
yeah. So
I've
that's the point,
extended
right?
my stay. Yeah.
Yeah, we want to percolate this abundance, this joy into everyone that
Yes,
we meet.
absolutely.
Yeah,
You feel so grateful to God that He's making you instrument in so many ways.
yeah, true.
Thank
Okay,
you, Nikit.
anyone?
Are we done?
Yeah, we are done. Anyone, anything else? Otherwise, we'll close for the meditation. So see you all for the meditation. Today we don't have the 9:15, so it'll be
Okay.
meditation and then we'll be off.
Thank you. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Bhaiya.
Bye.
Ram Ram.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Ram
Thank
Ram.
you, Ram.